All right. Welcome back to yet another episode of I'll Read It Eventually. This is actually something that I think that I said I would do previously, which is talk about a couple of books that I got thrifting at Goodwill. Um, Goodwill's an incredible place to buy books, I have to say, um, because you get, I think this is why, you get all kinds of people who take their books there and say, you know what, I just don't have any interest in this. Which means that their shelves are like this wild kaleidoscope of things that Americans have read and don't want to read again, or things that people just don't really appreciate, or, not to be morbid, but the contents of, grandma's bookshelf or whatever, once grandma has shuffled off this mortal coil. And as a result, you can find anything. And to be honest, what I have here is actually not that wide of an array of things. It's only 3 books, so how wide of an array could it be? But I have gone to Goodwill before and bought just a crazy, weird array of books. So I always love going to Goodwill to look for books. You never know what you're going to find. You never know. And they're always cheap as well. Most books there sell for $1.59, at least here in Lexington, and so you can get something pretty good for a pretty decent price. Um, the first book, and I picked these up, I don't know, a week and a half ago, something like that. But the first one that I got a hold of is Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, which is one of those books that you always hear about. It's considered to be a classic of world literature. I was actually thinking about it before I hit record, and I realized I've actually seen a movie version of this with Keira Knightley, and I don't even remember who the male lead is. Keira Knightley is obviously the star. That's why it's called Anna Karenina, because it's about a woman. Um, Vladimir Nabokov even says on the front in a little blurb, one of the greatest love stories in world literature. There he is. Straight from the horse's mouth. Um, this is a book I've heard about a million times. Obviously, I've seen the movie, so I have some vague remembrance of how that goes. But this is one of those like classic Russian novels that are like 1,000 pages long. Just beautiful. I've got an edition of War and Peace over there on one of my shelves, and I think this year I'm gonna bite the bullet and read either War and Peace or this, because I've only read like one of the great Russian novels, which was Crime and Punishment, and I'm pretty sure I read an abridged version. It was in high school. I think it's probably abridged. I can't imagine them being like, let's get one of these fantastic Russian novels and have a bunch of sophomores in high school digest some of the greatest things that ever been put to paper. I just don't think that that's what my literature teachers did. Um, and Crime and Punishment's kind of a tough one to read because you just got this wretch Raskolnikov who's just like completely horrible person who gives into the worst possible urges and then lives with the consequences. And so I don't know. Although this book is like that to a degree, as it says here on the back. It's Tolstoy's classic tale of love and adultery set against the backdrop of 19th century Imperial Russia. So, Anna Karenina makes bad decisions in this book, or one or two bad decisions, and suffers the consequences. So, like I said, this is definitely on the stack of books that I plan to read in the near future. But it kind of has like a swap in War and Peace slot. But again, this was $1.59. This is a modern library classics edition of this book. These are usually not cheap. They come with a scholarly introduction. There's usually a whole team of translators if it comes from a language other than English. And it's got a lot of front and back material to sort of help you understand what's going on. And there's in this me see if I can get to it really quickly and not just utterly destroy. Yeah, here we go. This has a table of ranks in the Russian imperial court. So you can see, you can refer back to this as you read and be like, oh yeah, this guy that was just introduced, he's a complete nobody, right? Or, oh, that guy's like pretty high up. Good for him, right? And it's that kind of thing that I think distinguishes this from some other kind of imprint of a book like this. That front and back material, especially with a book that's 1,000 pages long. You need some explanation, right? Most people, myself included, cannot just dive into a 1,000-page book and be like, oh yeah, I understand everything that's going on here. I have all the background knowledge I could possibly need. I understand the story perfectly. This amount of length is going to just create some problems for you. And so, much as I dislike having someone at the beginning of the book tell me what happens at the end, which is one of the reasons I hate book introductions. People who write book introductions assume you've read the book. You haven't. That's why you're reading the introduction. It's an introduction to the book, not a spoiler for the book. But the last 4 or 5 that I have read, without fail, the person writing the introduction has spoiled major plot points because they assume that the person reading the introduction has read the book before. I digress. My point is, that is why this imprint, modern library classics, is usually a little pricier, because there are people who explain what's going on and help you understand the book, who know their stuff and have done their reading and done their work, and they've read the book without help, unlike me. So, yeah, excited to get into this. A little daunted to get into this, but excited to get into this nonetheless. And again, just $1.59. How can you resist? My wife would say it's simple, just don't pick it up. That's crazy. The next one is a real hard shift into something else. This is Apollodorus' Library of Greek Mythology. Something funny about this book is that it's the guy Apollodorus, might not even be his name, and they have no idea where he's from. They used to think he was Alexandrian, and now scholars are basically like, yeah, we don't know who wrote that, or kind of even when. It just appeared out of the ether one day. But this is another one of those, like, oh wow, that's a pretty nice imprint. It's Oxford World's Classics, which, is, again, there's a scholarly introduction to the work. There's a lot of front and back material to help you understand what's going on. And as I was flipping through this earlier, I actually noticed something, again, kind of funny, like with Anna Karenina, where, oh gosh, there's so much material in the back that I have to flip through to find this. It's terrible. Such a good book. Yes, there's a section at the end where Odysseus, it's talking about him coming back to his homeland. And, in the Odyssey, there's a bunch of suitors there who are trying to get his wife Penelope to marry them because they want Odysseus' kingdom because they think he's dead. And so they're like, make me the Lord of Ithaca. And this book, says, when he arrived in his native land, he found that his house had been ruined. For believing that he was dead, suitors were courting Penelope. And then it lists all of them. And I'll just read the next line so you understand what it is I'm saying. It lists all of them. From Dulichian came 57. And it lists all of them. The list starts down here. And it comes to an end over here. Incredible. The ancients just had such a weird way of thinking about writing. It's just a different world. I don't know why that's the thing that stands out to me about this book. But my understanding from reading a little bit of the beginning and just some of the back material is that this book is essentially a series of genealogical tables and where did this person come from myths. And I think that's really important. So much of Western culture is based on Greco-Roman understandings of where the world came from and who people are and what they're doing and what they're for. Even if you're a Christian, the Iliad and the Odyssey are foundational stories of the Western canon, which matters, right? I mean, they are part of who you are. Anybody who's ever enjoyed the movie Troy should know that. This book, and there are others like it from the ancient world, but this book seeks to sort of put all of these disparate stories into one place and say, all right, well, here's how all of these things go together. Here's how all these weird characters who show up are related. Sometimes literally how they are related. Can't wait to get to the part about Zeus and see all 70 of the women that he had children with, and how the author parses all of that together. If you're not aware, the Greek gods are so messy. Just so messy. They are just human beings with superpowers. They enjoy drinking and fighting and sleeping with people that they're not married to and all sorts of just very fundamentally human things. The gods in Greco-Roman culture are just humans, but more, right? Just more intensely humans with superpowers. They have all the urges that human beings do. They give in to all the urges that human beings do. They just have superpowers. They can fly. They can, be unharmed by physical weapons. They know things that they shouldn't know. They can do what we would basically say is magic, or miracles. But they're just human beings. I mean, they pick favorites. They're terrible. It's so good that Jesus came along and said, you know what? What if, instead of being exactly like you, I was better than you, and I could call you up to my standard? Instead of Zeus, who's like, what if I just got down in the muck and became exactly like you? It's terrible. So, Apollodorus' Library of Greek Mythology should be a fun read. Probably going to be a little dry, though. A lot of those ancient documents, very dry, unfortunately. They weren't writing for people who were addicted to TikTok. So, shame on them, Use fewer words. Golly. The last thing I picked up was almost exclusively on the basis of two aspects of this cover. Number one is the word Rome. I love the Romans. There was that trend a while ago where women were supposed to ask their menfolk, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And I was like, if he probably thinks about it once a day. I'm honestly not sure that I ever stop thinking about it. The Romans are just fascinating to me. And all of the horrific aspects of their imperialist project aside, they're just so stinking cool. So, when I saw Rome on the cover of this book, that pretty much had me sold. But then I also saw that this book was in part by Mary Beard, who's kind of one of the more popular level historians of the Romans right now. She is a professor at Cambridge in the UK, and she's written books like SPQR and Emperor of Rome, and there's another one that's on the tip of my tongue. I don't know. But this, it actually had a University of Kentucky bookstore sticker on it when I bought it. So clearly this was a class textbook, and so I almost put it back, right? I was like, I don't need it. I was talking about how the other book was going to be dry. This book, I was like, I don't need a super dry treatment of ancient Roman religion. But then I saw Mary Beard's name on it, and I said, okay, well, she's brilliant, but she is also a popular level historian. She knows how to write things and make them not utterly boring and snore-inducing. And honestly, with history, that is so important. You you cannot write history or talk about history and make it boring. If you make it boring, you're doing it wrong. You just you're killing it. You're ruining it. You gotta make it interesting. You gotta point out the weird human parts of it, right? All these like odd things where it's like, yeah, Nero absolutely tanked the economy of the Roman Empire, or at least contributed to something that had been going on in the reigns prior to his. But he was also just a massive theater kid who desperately wanted to be liked by someone. And he found his adoring fans not among his courtiers, not among the aristocrats of the Roman nobility, not among the army. No, no, no. It's just among the common people. And Nero, with his weird neckbeard, and I mean that, go Google Nero Roman coins, and there is a Roman coin where it is very clear that his beard isn't where mine is. It's all here. Call him Neckbeardo. Nero was a theater kid, and he just played to the masses. He loved to go around and sing. He loved to play his little lyre. He loved to act in front of crowds. None of those are things that a Roman emperor should have been seen to be doing, especially in the first 100 years of the Roman Empire, when the office of emperor, those guys are trying to establish some gravitas for themselves. You know, you've got Augustus and Tiberius, and, well, yeah, those are pretty much the only two who had any gravitas. The Emperor Claudius, who came before Nero and may actually have been assassinated by Nero. The Emperor Claudius, some of his favorite pieces of humor were his own fart jokes. Just incredible. Okay, so, like, you can't do history boring, and Mary Beard does not do history in a boring way. Roman religion is fascinating, because the Romans thought that there were spirits and gods and all kinds of weird supernatural spiritual creatures in everything. The trees, the water, rain puddles, rocks. And they were superstitious as all get out. And so they had religious rules about everything. They had all of these deities and spirits that they paid attention to and were amulets for and offered offerings to. I mean, every crossroads in Rome, this is true, or at least I heard that it was true. Every crossroads in Rome was considered to be a religious site. There were shrines at crossroads because there were spirits of crossroads, and every crossroad had a spirit. There is, Tom Holland talks about this. Oh, wow, it's actually in the background. That's incredible. In his book, Pax, which is right above my finger. In his book, Pax, Tom Holland talks about the fact that the Romans had a piece of pavement in the Forum Romanum that was made out of black stone, which everything else is made out of like limestone, so it stood out. It was made out of black stone, just a section of the pavement, just in the middle of the Forum. And the Romans, in the time of Nero, they were like, you know, that's a super important piece of pavement. And when foreigners would be like, oh yeah, what happened there? The Romans would be like, I don't know. No clue. Couldn't tell you. Been way too long. The last guy who knew died like 150 years ago. So we just sort of like make offerings there because whatever god's over there we don't want to make him mad. So we just sort of keep treating it nicely. Hope he doesn't kill us all. That's insane. And yet also makes a weird amount of sense if you believe in the sheer number of gods and spirits that the Romans did. And that's why this book is going to be really, really good. Because the Romans have 1 million of those pieces of pavement that are important for some reason, and I don't remember why, because the last guy who knew died over a century ago. They have 1 million of those. And so I have no doubt that this book will will fascinate. It covers everything from the time of Romulus and Remus in the 8th century BC, or 8th century BC, all the way through the kings and the Republic, into the late Republican era and the early Empire, and then you get the mystery cults of like the 2nd century A.D. You get the rise of Christianity in 1st century A.D., and then you sort of get the combat between paganism and paganism writ large, and sort of mystery cults is a smaller aspect of that, and then Christianity, and yeah, I'm confident that this book is going to be really cool, both from an ancient history perspective and also from a Christian history perspective, because so much of the history of the later Roman Empire is the history of Christianity. I mean, this is the last thing I'll say about this book. I did not realize I had this much to say about this book. But the last thing I'll say about this book is that one of the most important figures in 4th and 5th century Rome, like the Roman Empire in the West particularly, was Augustine of Hippo, who was a Roman Catholic bishop in North Africa, and Ambrose of Milan, who is the bishop of Milan. I guess he's not really a Roman Catholic bishop. He's a Western Latin bishop. So is Augustine. But 2 churchmen, right? Like, here's the test. So, most people probably couldn't name those 2 guys, but ask people to name a significant Roman emperor from the 4th or 5th centuries. Well, last half of the 4th or any part of the 5th century. They're not going to be able to do it, because there really aren't hardly any, except for Theodosius. He's probably the last honestly important guy. All the secular historians are going to be like, what about Julian the Apostate? Julian the Apostate's not that important. Really interesting, not that important. And if you don't believe me, just wait until I read one of the 3 books I have about Julian the Apostate, and then, golly Bob howdy, will we talk about Julian the Apostate? Maybe that's what I'll do next. Maybe I'll finally read one of those, or 2 of those. I don't know. But yeah, $1.59. I really, again, no idea I had that much to say about that. That's why I love books. But yeah, so less than $6 at a Goodwill, and I have all of that. So that's all I've got for now. I'm trying actually not to buy a bunch of new books, he says, as he sits in a room full of books, with piles of books that keep growing every day. So I don't expect to do a bunch more episodes of me having bought books, and my wife hopes that I don't. But yeah, I think that's all for now. So I think I'll probably stick with what I said at the end of last episode, which is go read something. See you next time.